Meta AI is the personal AI that's tailored to you, now with its very own app. It's built to get to know you, offering helpful answers and inspiration. Looking for something to add to your bucket list? Meta AI goes beyond traveling the world. It remembers you're a basketball fanatic and suggests you attend one of the playoff games. Just start typing or speaking to get the answers you need, wherever and whenever, because Meta AI is your personal AI. Download the Meta AI app, now available on the Apple App Store and Google Play.
You're listening to What She Said with me, Candace Sampson, and this is your weekly reminder to take up big space in life, laugh loudly, absorb new knowledge, and continue to grow and expand. What She Said is your space for the big conversations that matter and the little joys that make life sweeter. This is where empowerment meets self-care and mansplaining has no seat at the table. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's jump into it because life's too short not to embrace the good stuff while we tackle the tough stuff.
I'd been through like a knife attack in South Africa in the early 2000s. And then I was on the beach in Thailand when the Boxing Day 2004 tsunami hit. And then this life-altering sexual assault kind of gang held captive overnight in Trinidad and Tobago, where I was living at the time. And then, unfortunately, a traumatic birth and a kind of a year-long struggle with postpartum after the birth of my son.
That's Sara Davidson. And if there's anyone who can speak to just how trauma settles in the body, it's her. In this episode, we talk about how trauma isn't just in your head. It lives in your tissues, your nervous system, your posture, and your pain. Sara shares how healing doesn't always start with talking, why community matters, and what true resilience looks like after the world breaks you open. Her new memoir, Anybody Can Heal, is part personal story, part resource guide, filled with the kind of wisdom and compassion you only get from someone who's lived it. Let's hear what she said. Sara, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Candace. I appreciate the time and space you're giving me today.
Well, this is a really important conversation, and I want to start with perhaps you could explain what it means when people say trauma lives in the body.
Yeah, so what it means is essentially that, trauma isn't just psychological, but it manifests in the body, in the nervous system, at the cellular level. And yeah, so, people think it's just psychological, but there's actually this massive body component that it actually lives, it lives in you after the event.
Why is it so important then that we look beyond talk therapy to fully heal ourselves after suffering from trauma?
It's a great question because talk therapy, it is also very important, and but talk therapy can help reframe, and it can help you understand, it can help you make meaning of the events or the trauma, but it still doesn't really tend to kind of what's happening at a nervous system level or within the cells. And I think that kind of 101 of working with survivors of trauma, people struggling with the aftermath, is the foundation of it all is teaching people, working with them to be able to stabilize themselves, regulate their nervous system. So this actually really should come before talking about it happens anyways, because you want the person, often talking about it kind of can re-trigger and really disrupt their nervous system. And we want them to be able to, with our help as well, but eventually on their own, to really stabilize and get themselves back to, a regulated level so their body knows that they're safe.
I think a lot of people might recognize the signs when they are mentally in anguish, what it's doing to them. But what are some of the signs that our body might be trying to tell us something is unresolved? Because a lot of times, I'm a poster child for this, not recognizing the connection sometimes between what's happened in my head and what's going on in my body. So what are some signs?
Absolutely. And I think in life, it's just easy to get on autopilot and go. And it's really hard to kind of stop and recognize what's happening in our body. But some physical symptoms would be, like the tightness in our shoulders or jaws. It can be insomnia, fatigue, even if you've gotten a good sleep. It can be digestive issues, kind of like IBS type symptoms. It could manifest behaviorally, where maybe you're more jumpy at things, or you're like very irritated or irrational when it doesn't actually necessarily match what's happening. Like just really on edge, chronic pain sometimes can be even how people hold themselves, like their posture, depending on what the trauma was. So really, when we listen to our body, it's really quite interesting what our body shares with us where it's being stored. But again, like you said, super easy to get on autopilot and kind of bypass all the signs.
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, I'm wondering if women in particular tend to dismiss or brush aside physical manifestations because we often hear things that, it's all in our head, or, that's not that painful, or it's not that big a deal. Do you think women do that?
Yes, I think everybody does it. And I think women definitely do it, and I think even just things from like childbirth, feeling unsafe in the world, for some women, like I think it is all held within us and comes out as like pelvic pain, lower back pain, the chronic fatigue, carrying everything on your shoulders, and then, the trauma being stored in the body as well, for sure.
So oftentimes people can be carrying around a physical pain and a mental anguish, but they're not ready to address the mental anguish. Can they start to heal the body without addressing what's going on in the mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does take slowing down, and often guided by somebody who does this type of work. But it's really, honestly, it's just like sometimes just like a check-in, like a slow down, a check-in, a grounding to the present. What do I need right now? Even just like a simple body scan where you almost like scan from head to toe and just really take a moment and again, get off autopilot and feel like where's the tension? Is it tingly? Like, what's happening in my body? And it can just start with grounding techniques, right? It can really start with just bringing yourself back down, feet on the ground, nice deep breaths, and really kind of getting that nervous system regulated first. That would really be just like definitely a good first step. And I think for a lot of people who have been through hard things, have been through trauma, like we want to ensure that they feel like they have choice, right? And sometimes people aren't ready to talk about it, but tending to the body and teaching their body safety and like a feeling of embodied safety really is like that first step, even if they don't want to talk about anything that's happened.
So you just don't talk the walk, you walk the walk here, because you write really candidly in your memoir about surviving multiple traumatic events. And I think people's jaws are going to be on the ground when you share these. So what was the turning point that led you to write this book?
I think the turning point, again, so I'd been through like a knife attack in South Africa in the early 2000s. And then I was on the beach in Thailand when the Boxing Day 2004 tsunami hit. And then this life-altering sexual assault kind of gang held captive overnight in Trinidad and Tobago, where I was living at the time. And then, unfortunately, a traumatic birth and a kind of a year-long struggle with postpartum after the birth of my son. And it's funny because the first two events, I was still in this time where I was like, oh, I'm fine. I don't need to see a therapist. All is good. And then the Trinidad event really rocked me to my core and took me to a place I had never been before. And people kept saying, oh, you should write a book. You should write a book. But I don't know, telling my story didn't feel like it really resonated with me. Why would anybody just tell these things that you'd been through? And I think it wasn't until I became a psychotherapist, and really started to kind of like truthfully help hold other people's horrors. And I really realized the critical piece of my journey was the ability to go through this extensive trauma therapy. And I wouldn't have had that without the support of my parents and financially and, obviously just being there for me. And then also family and friends that, I don't know, literally stop their lives sometimes on my hardest days to help hold me up. And it was only then that I realized like, oh, not everybody has this. Like I am very lucky, but not everybody has this access. So the book was really about like, how do I take this, be thankful for it, and then take all the, I don't know, the gold nuggets, the meat and potatoes of everything I had kind of learned in therapy and about healing and about my experiences, both lived and with my own clients, and kind of just packaged it in like a story that wasn't just a story about the events, but it was it was a story where people could read it and gather all this information, kind of like what I want to pass down to survivors of the things I had learned. And that's why at the back of the book, there's also like just very easy, plain strategies on like how to ground yourself, what to do when I'm feeling anxious or panicking, or how to do breath work and why it's so important, because not everyone has access. So how can people take this book, read it, and then have these like really concrete strategies to kind of like carry around with them?
The number one selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
In golf, precision is everything, on and off the course. PGA of America chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business for smooth operations and seamless transactions. Together, we enhance ticketing and concessions for better fan experiences from gate to green. This is pro-level efficiency. This is PGA of America with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
You touch on something really sad and a little bit heartbreaking, is that, not everybody does have that support network around them. So this book addresses solutions for people who don't have those networks around them.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could just, obviously gather people around everybody that was going through hard things, but that's
sure, yeah,
not the case. But I think it's more like I wanted people to know, like, through my lived like, we're not alone, right? We're part of this like collective community, however big that might be, where other people have gone through hard things, and, and other people can heal, and everybody has the capacity to heal, like no longer how long the wounds have been there or kind of how deep they are. Like we really do have the capacity. And it starts with being kind to ourselves, being aware, right? Building self-compassion. And then again, just building that embodied safety. Like, when I feel this way, like, what do I need and how do I bring my system back down? And so I just wanted people to know that they weren't alone, even if, and truthfully, we don't need a million people in our corner. We need like one, right? We need one person to kind of help witness us, witness our hard times without judgment.
So then how has your healing shaped how you show up for your clients today outside of the book, just when you're one-on-one in your office with people?
I never knew this before, but through my own therapy, I really realized the power of like having someone else, again, sit with you in your pain, in your horrors, witness it without judgment. And that really is the cornerstone, honestly, of therapy. And that's why the therapeutic alliance is so important with your therapist. But I don't think I understood that power until I had done it myself and literally had other therapists kind of like hold that space for me. And so that's one thing I've really, if I can do anything well as a therapist, I want like that to be it. I want to build this relationship with people so that they feel safe enough for, me to witness their horrors. So I think that's one piece, is just recognizing that. The other thing is sexual assault survivors, lots of different traumas, people struggle with different things. What I really struggled with was like the way my body reacted to these various traumas. There's like the I wish I could have, I should have, and those aren't really helpful. And they actually end up leading to lots of shame and just guilt. And I think through all my like professional and lived experiences in therapy, I really understoed the psycho-ed of why my body did the things it did, and just to be a lot more compassionate to myself and truthfully now like proud of myself for the way that I survived these things. And so trying to, if clients will hear it and that's where they're at, like really explain to them and, hopefully kind of relinquish some of the shame that they feel for similar things. I'd say that would be the other. And then I don't know, I have troubles with the access. Like it's just therapy is not accessible to everybody. So I still hold like a number of spots for just low cost, I call it sliding scale, for clients that can't afford, full paying therapists. So I hold those, and I promise myself I will hold those until I retire. I will always hold spots for that.
You work with a lot of young people in Toronto. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges for them in accessing mental health support? I mean, you just mentioned cost as one of
cost. Absolutely. I think navigating the system, people don't necessarily know, especially if either the parents have never had access to their own therapy or sought out resources. I think people just don't really know where to go, who to turn to, how to look for a therapist. I think people turn to family doctors, obviously, because that helps guide them a little bit. But I think there's a disconnect between like, oh, my teen is struggling, and especially if, there's no money, or the finances aren't there, and then where do I go to next? So I think that continues to be a problem. I also think teens get a bit of a bad reputation sometimes as being very difficult, but they are truthful in their struggles. And I think we need to honor that more and really be aware of it. And there are signs, right? They might not be the traditional signs, but, when they're asking for help, they might show it in different ways. But I think it's listening to our teen, and allowing them space to kind of, stay connected with them so that they have space to come and say, like, listen, I'm struggling and it feels like I can't manage this. But I think parents, life is busy, and I'm a parent myself. I know life is busy. And it's easy just to be like, oh, it's okay. You'll be okay. Just push through. And I think we need to listen to them more.
I think I sometimes live in a little bit of a bubble. So I like to think that discussions in and around mental health are quite open now. But is there still a shame component attached for this generation?
I do think so. I think we've come a long way, which is awesome. But I think, I even think of my parents' generation, and what they taught me, and they're amazing people and they did the best they could. But their view on mental health is, it was their generation. And probably for the first 25 years of my life, I felt similar. Like, oh, I'm fine. I can do this. I don't need a therapist. Right. And it was only kind of till when I was rocked to my core that I was like, gosh, I can't do this. I need support. And so I think it's going to be a few generations of continuing to have these conversations, but it's not going to be perfect.
What does it look like when healing is rooted in community and not just individual therapy?
Well, we're wired for connection, right? We literally come out of the womb being co-regulated by another human being because we don't have those skills as a newborn. So we are wired for connection. And I think, rooted in community, again, is being in non-judgmental, connected spaces where other people know your struggles, but being able to exist in them is it's a bit of a game changer, right? When we're in isolation, it's there's shame attached to it. There's, the loneliness, and it's just the connection with people. That's one of the main grounding kind of strategies is connection. And so I think we need people. And again, it doesn't need to be 50, but it needs to be with people.
For someone listening who's ready to begin healing but has no idea where to start, what's one small step they could take today?
Yeah, I always go back to being just compassionate to self. And I know that can sound a bit hokey sometimes, but it truly is like taking a moment, whether that's sitting down or standing up and kind of just being aware of where you're at. Are you holding tension somewhere? Are you feeling anxious? Is there something in my chest that feels heavy? And really kind of just being kind to yourself. Like it makes sense that there's this stuff for whatever I've been through. And, what do I need right now? Do I need to call somebody? Right? What is my body asking for, and kind of how I can show up for it, I think is, there's obviously next steps, but I feel like that's a good first step is just taking some deep breaths, reorienting yourself, look around and kind of what does my body need right now?
I think we all have different definitions of resilience based on our personalities and so on. What's your definition now after everything you've been through and everything you do now?
Yeah, if you had asked me this question 20 years ago, I would have been, I would have said like, oh, resilience is just pushing forward, and it's like being unscarred by something or unscathed. And like, that couldn't be further from the truth. Resilience now is about being flexible and adaptable, right? It's like going through hard things and not necessarily being unchanged by it, but being able to adapt to it, even if it feels hard. It's about asking ourselves what we need and showing up for ourselves in the way. And sometimes that's just brushing my teeth. On other days, it was going for a walk. On other days, it was playing a soccer tournament. And so it was really just kind of like tending to what I needed in the time. I think resilience is finding a way forward. Trauma doesn't really go away, unfortunately, and healing is not linear, but it's finding a way to live a meaningful life despite it. I think it's more just really about, again, flexibility and adaptability and figuring out how to move forward without the idea of, perfection. Like, it doesn't have to look a certain way. It can be messy. There can be back steps. And it's just about being able to find joy and connection and all of the things in a meaningful life despite it.
What do you hope readers take away from your book, Anybody Can Heal?
That we're not alone, that everybody has the capacity to heal. Again, no matter how long the pain's been there or where it comes from, that the mind-body connection is really important. So the psychological piece is there, but how do we reclaim our safety and reclaim our joy in things? Like, it is possible. I think that it's lifelong, right? Like, it's not linear. It doesn't look perfect. We kind of trudge forward and, go back sometimes, and that's okay. Being self-aware and compassionate to ourselves is part of the journey as well.
I want people to be able to find the book, but also to be able to connect with you. Where can they do all that? And are you on social media?
I am on social media, Candace, as much as I do not love it. So the book is available kind of wherever books are sold. They can order it. But then it's also in Indigo. Indigo is awesome. And all the major ones in Toronto, you can buy it in store or online. My website, saradavidson.ca. There's information on there. And of course, Instagram at Anybody Can Heal is another place that they can follow. Also, I'm using the proceeds for people for the books and making sure that I can get copies into women's shelters, addiction centers, and kind of community libraries across Ontario, across the province. So any help is wonderful.
I love that. Perfect. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Candace. Take care.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to share it with someone who'd love it too. And don't forget to hit subscribe to What She Said with me, Candace Sampson, on your favorite podcast app. It's the easiest way to stay connected. Want more? Sign up for my newsletter at whatshesaidtalk.com to get all the latest updates, and let's keep the conversation going on social. You can find What She Said on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll find me on Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Candace Said. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Hi, it's Ashley and Jess with Wellness Reality Check. We are two health practitioners, moms, and best friends trying to navigate the world of holistic health in a balanced, productive way that brings health to our lives instead of dogmatic extremes. We'll be breaking down health trends, interviewing your favorite health influencers, and always keeping it real. We hope this podcast brings listeners back down to earth, providing a dose of reality in the often idealized world of health and wellness.
Wellness Reality Check. Follow the show now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at wellnessrealitycheck.com.
I'm Jeff Woods, and I'm shining a light on music and the rock stars who make it.
He just was one of those people, he stood out.
He was a magic guy. He really was a magic guy. We all have faults. He had the same amount of faults as we all had.
This was before Led Zeppelin. Robert was full on. I mean, he was Led Zeppelin without the band behind him. He had the hair, the jeans, the whole thing, and he was amazing.
The Records and Rockstars podcast, heard around the world and yours to hear wherever you get podcasts. All the episodes from JeffWoodsRadio.com.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.